Hi everyone, this is Kyle with kayDbait. I've been trying to make a video for several days now, and I just couldn't get the right subject matter and content to make it, worth it, and I've trashed all my other attempts. So I wanted to talk about reason and logical conclusions and the lack thereof in today's society, in the United States at least, most importantly in politics and the media. So the things that I wanted to talk about and tried to talk about before and failed was having examples, real world examples of when somebody says something and then others respond either because it wasn't with logic or responding without using logic again. And usually it's a piggyback effect where one person says something that's unsubstantiated and then other people respond with equally unsubstantiated criticisms. Or their criticisms are substantiated, but the other people don't believe it's something that's worth or valued or relatable to what they're originally saying, and it becomes a mess because you're not talking to the same people all the time. So one person says something, and another person responds to that statement, but not everyone sees the response. They see the original, or they see a 10th response down the road because the person's now responding to them, and it's just it's not a conversation. It's not something that people can follow and understand because it's just jumping, it's piling on more and more misinformation. So I actually have over here opened a few examples of different things that have been happening over the past few days that I've been collecting and that really, really, really bother me. The first one being, it's always going to be here. It's Donald Trump. And I don't like making videos about him because it's like bringing up just what everyone else is already talking about. And it's not that I want to be unique, but I want to have what I say matter. And if everyone else is talking about it and no one's listening because, as soon as somebody drops the name, somebody clicks off or they just don't care because they're already made up their mind about it for or against. So I don't want to make a video about him, but the things that he's a good example for when this is happening, both what he says being wrong, but also people not treating him fairly even when he's not being wrong. I watched a few of his videos recently, and I was really looking for what he was saying because I always try to understand what people are saying. And I read there were all articles related to the videos are always against him because those are really the most common ones, at least on Facebook and on Yahoo. But I do read the articles that are for him. It's rarely they have videos with them, which is weird. But the one I read, I read the article. It was very against him, saying he insulted a whole bunch of Jewish people and Islamic people, or just a whole bunch of people in general. And I watched the video, and it wasn't really against him. Like, he didn't say things like in the article said. He did say things that could easily be considered insulting, but only if you made it racist. Like, he was talking about how they're good with money and they want to buy him, but they can't. That's not because he was talking to people that were Jewish. It was because he was talking to people that were really, really rich businessmen. So I felt that wasn't fair. Now, obviously, you can associate that because some of the stuff he said where it was kind of off, but it doesn't necessarily scream racism. It doesn't necessarily say, hey, he's saying this because they're Jewish. It might be, but you can't pull that out of it. It wasn't there. It wasn't clear. So I think that wasn't really fair of the articles that I read saying that. I don't believe he's going to say something like that to their face if he's ever going to say it. So that would be kind of also insulting his intelligence, which is another just a part of the pile. But you can't say that. So some of the stuff I did notice that he said about it, some of the things that he said I didn't agree with it. So if you don't agree with somebody, you're really looking for them to mess up. You're like, oh, I'm going to get him. And I don't think that's a fair way of going into something. I really, really think it's a bad way of trying to learn about somebody or respond to somebody or be fair. And also, if I'm looking in a weird spot, I'm trying to look directly into my webcam, and it's really hard to tell if I'm looking directly into the site or if I'm looking above it or below it because it's really dark. So I apologize if my eyes aren't focused directly on the camera. I'm normally looking at my screen. So I apologize for the the awkwardness of my screen's actually over here now, but my webcam's up here. So if you see me looking over there, I'm looking at my screen. So he said a lot of things about what he would do or how he would do something, and I didn't agree with his methods. I didn't agree with he didn't say a lot, but the things he did say I felt were just kind of eh. I think he's simplifying a lot of things, but I don't think the response was fair. So when he brings up that people aren't being fair, there's a lot of people that aren't being fair. I'm not saying he's right about everything he says, but you still have to treat him fairly. When somebody's wrong and you just randomly attack them constantly, then that's not fair. So, yeah, he's disliked, but that's not grounds for complete dismissal. The other thing, again, this is on top of the first thing that Trump did, was he was interviewed, or he was on a radio talk show, or actually it's a video now, but he was interviewed by a radio talk show guy named Alex Jones. And I looked up Alex Jones. He has a really bad reputation as being a conspiracy theorist, and really, he doesn't trust the government. He believes the government was involved in 9/11 and that several of the major shootings were conspiracies by the government to push agendas and to push ideas. The biggest one that he brought up was what was it called? It was a major shooting. I have it opened right here. Where'd it go? Here it is. The Sandy Hook shootings. And then recently, just a few days ago, the San Bernardino shooting. I actually lived really close to San Bernardino when I was growing up. That doesn't matter at all because, I didn't live there and I don't know people from there necessarily. But just mentioning that I used to live in that area, kind of a random thing. But for him to say during, I think it was an hour before or an hour after... an hour before the shooting, so it was an hour after the interview, he posted that the San Bernardino thing was probably or maybe fake. It was faked by the government. And it's a conspiracy theory because, when you say it's true when you don't have evidence, it's really an accusation. So even if you're just hinting, even if you're just hinting, what you're doing is you're leaving this stream of consciousness kind of thing where you're trying to get other people to believe you, or to agree with you, or to act in a certain way as if it were true. And that's not fair. So if you look at something and you want it to be something, so you make it that way in your mind or verbally to get other people to believe you, that's wrong. Because you're not using facts and you're not using fairness in your arguments. So when I see that, and I looked it up, and I don't think that's fair. So him as a person, I don't like. And apparently he's been doing this for a long time where he's just very, very aggressively against things that he disagrees with. And you're allowed to do that as long as you have facts and fairness to back up your arguments and your actions, but it doesn't seem like he does. So I watched the full interview. It was about 30 minutes long. It was pretty long. I didn't see much from it that was good. But a lot of the stuff Trump said wasn't really bad. It was just kind of, I didn't agree with it. So when I look at that and I try not to say I disagree with that, therefore he is wrong. I have to say I disagree with it and I don't see his reasoning because he's not very good at explaining his reasoning. And while I don't think his reasoning is good because he's just not explaining it, and when somebody refuses to explain or doesn't explain their reasoning, it's really hard for me to back them up. It's one of the reasons that I don't naturally follow people. I question authority a lot. So if you give me a reason and I agree with that reason, or I at least understand the reason, then I am much more likely to follow. But he doesn't. And in this one, it's a very generic, let's talk about this. Okay, that's your idea. Let's talk about this. That's your idea. That in itself doesn't associate Donald Trump with this guy. And that's what this article I was reading is about. It directly ties him to it. Because it's like, oh, Donald Trump interviewed this guy an hour before the shooting. So you're trying to connect the two. It's like, oh, this is an anti-shooter guy interviewing Donald Trump right before a mass shooting that the guy then denies is a mass shooting, or at least denies the reasoning behind it. And so, oh, then Trump is a this or Trump is a that. Again, that's not fair. So I think that Donald Trump doesn't actually know what this guy was doing in the past. Maybe because he does say, and this is the only part that really bothers me about any of this, because it's all just talk. It's all just talk. The one thing that bothers me is when he says that that Donald Trump, to that guy, it was one of the last things he says in the interview is, your reputation is amazing. Talking about Alex Jones' reputation, saying your reputation is amazing. So that is it's saying that he's pretty much trustworthy, or that he has a good track record, or that he's a man of outstanding merit, at least in Trump's eyes. And when I see that, it's like how people attack Obama for having that pastor guy, and everything that guy did is a reflection of Obama, and therefore he should be discredited for it. Or anyone, just somebody like just associating with anybody. Obama's been attacked many times for that. Bush has been attacked for that. Cain has been attacked for that. Just everyone's been attacked by associations. And in this article, Donald Trump was attacked for his association with this guy. And in all of the arguments, it's not really that fair, but his vote of confidence at the end does bother me, because he's pretty much saying, I agree with him. I am with him. I support him. And I don't think that that's something you can say without understanding who that person is, or at least you shouldn't say without understanding who that person is. So either he doesn't know that this guy is a conspiracy theorist that believes that things that are true aren't, or that aren't true are, or he actually agrees with him on those things. So he either doesn't know or he agrees. So those are two things that do make a fair argument. Is when he said that he says, your reputation is great, or amazing. He says your reputation is amazing. He's pretty much giving him, I know you and good things. So because it's what a reputation is. That's what bothers me. And I know I'm saying this over and over again, but that is the basis of an argument. That is the basis of being able to say, okay, you're associated with that guy. You've on this big thing that's getting a lot of attention. You have clearly stated, officially pretty much, that you support what this guy says. And what that guy says can then be looked up, and then you can go from there, and you can believe that 9/11 was an inside job. You can say that this Sandy Hook shooting was a farce, that the government started it for its own agenda, or that the people were actors, or that the people were paid to do it in some fashion, or that there was just some sneaky kind of underhanded thing going on, and it wasn't a terrorist attack, or it was to push the terror, or it was just, you can look up that stuff and say, okay, that is kind of weird. But he doesn't have a stable reputation. His reputation, I'm looking on, I know it's Wikipedia, but he doesn't seem to just attack one side or the other, because he went after Bush, and now he went after Obama, and he seems to go on both sides. So he says he identifies as a libertarian, a paleo-conservative, and an aggressive constitutionalist. Okay, those are interesting, but so you can't say that he's biased for one party or the other, but you can say he's biased for his own agendas. And if you look at his agendas, they appear to be pro-guns, anti-climate change, that people are involved in climate change, very, very religiously pushing. He seems to really like being on TV. But looking at all this stuff, is you can see that Alex Jones, I don't know very much about him. It just says he's a radio host, and that he's been at rallies, and he's very political, and he's very, very into the things that he does. He's a very conspiracy theory pushing person. So I don't think that's somebody that you want to associate with strongly, because it's kind of all over the place. And if you do associate with him directly, and you have just made a broad statement of saying you know his reputation, and that you're positive in that review, it's dangerous. Especially if he goes off and does or says something crazy again, then you have to say, I'm not associated with him now. But I don't know if that kind of statement matters, but it's an assessment. I'm trying to assess this, and there's been a lot of it going on in the past few months, and it's almost all been around Obama and Trump. One of the other ones that I saw was Trump saying that Obama's from Kenya, or that at the very least that he's not from the United States. Trump did that for a really long time. He kept saying it over and over and over again. And so Obama got his birth records, and his history, and his college education thing, and just a whole bunch of things. And then Trump stopped talking about it for a long time. But when he was asked about it recently, and I think I mentioned this in another video, they said, okay, just answer this question. We'll never ask it again. No one will ask it again because you'll answer it. Is Obama from the United States? And he wouldn't answer the question. And I don't know why he wouldn't answer the question. And I speculated in that other video that he really can't, maybe he can't, because if he says anything, his supporters will get angry at him, because a lot of his supporters, or at the very least, some of his supporters do believe that. It was shouted at one of his rallies very recently. So his supporters do believe that. And not all of them, but some of them. And that's bad, because whether you believe it or not, it's pretty much been established that he's been the president for 7 years. And I know that doesn't equate to him being born here, but the consensus and all of the proof that has been given was for it, of him being a United States citizen. So at this point, why are you even saying it? Now, I did say before that I don't like authority. I question authority. I question things that haven't been explained. I've seen a lot of evidence for him being from the United States. You can say it's all been fabricated. Okay, that's a conspiracy theory kind of thing. So if you're going to say that, you have to also explain why it's true. You can't just say it's fabricated, because that doesn't mean anything. If you say this person and this person and this person, or this person with this person in this area, and this thing happened and this happened, you can explain your reasoning. But if your reasoning is, I want this to be true, so therefore it must be true, you're not using logic. You're not using reason. You're using your emotional, I want this to be true, so it must be true argument, and that's not fair. It's not good. So when Trump did that, and he recently, very recently, in that interview with, where was it? It was his interview with, not CNN, that was another annoying thing. I have a couple of different things open right here. What the heck is it? He was talking to the Jewish coalition of something, and he hinted at something, and it again, people were pointing out he must have been talking about this when he might not have been. So I'm just saying this, the way he said it wasn't good. It wasn't clear. It was purposely vague, and I don't know why it was purposely vague. The only thing I can understand that he would have been doing it was to just make people feel more like he was saying this again. Is he said there's something about Obama. There's some reason he's not saying that they're radical Muslims. There's something he's not telling us, or there's something we don't know about him. And when you say that, it's implying things. You're not explaining anything, you're not answering questions, you're implying. And when you do that as a smear, because that's what it is, it's not, you're not trying to explain something, because he's not a radical Muslim terrorist. He's not for the radical Muslim terrorists. Him not saying radical Muslim, which is what he was saying he wasn't saying. Trump was saying Obama would not say radical Muslim terrorist. To imply that must mean he is a radical Muslim terrorist is completely unfair and it's just not right. So you can't do that. So people are saying he must have meant this. And I'm saying at the very least you can't say something that is vague or implying of that, because at the very best, you're not saying anything. You're just implying something, and that's it. It's a fart in the wind, and it leaves a bad smell in the air. Nobody likes it. At worst, he's actually doing that. He's actually saying he is a radical Muslim terrorist without saying it, which is, it's trying to have your cake and eat it too. That's the worst possible. So I'm not saying that is or is not, but at the very least, it's not a good thing to do, because it's first of all, it's weak. It's the most petty kind of thing you can say. It's like, you know what? I'm not saying they're a slut. I'm not saying that they sleep around. I'm not saying this, but you know what? They hang out with the guys a lot. That's not fair. And there's no way of really of measuring it, because you aren't saying it. You aren't outright, and plausible deniability has always been a thing, but you can't say that to a group of people that you already know believe something is about that, and then just kind of putting that in there. It's like, they already have a bad reputation, so I'm just going to use that to knock them down a notch, just a little bit again. And that's not an argument. It's not a fair thing. So, I don't think people are treating Donald Trump fairly in a lot of the things he says, just because they're looking for something to say against him. There are things, and I think that's what's taking away from it, really, is there are things he's saying that aren't good and that need to be addressed, but they're being washed out by all of this stuff. And it's really easy to say, well, they keep making fun of my hair, they keep making fun of how megalomania I am when I'm not, and then this and this, and there's a million things that have always been him being accused of. And he has lied a few times, and he has just flat out denied things that were true. But you can't say that about things that he's not doing that with, because that just takes away from it. Accusing him of being like Hitler, or accusing him of being completely delusional. He's probably not delusional. He's probably not Hitler. There's a lot of other things you can assess fairly and still say, you know what, that's really dumb. But that doesn't mean everything he says is dumb. That means it doesn't mean everything he says is bad. And this is the issue that people have with people on the fence, people that haven't strongly one way or the other made a decision. It's very hard to do that with Trump, because he's very polarizing. He's a polarizing force. You either love him or you hate him. I've never seen somebody that was indifferent about him, except for the people that are indifferent about everything. And they just never got invested whatsoever. And that's also not good. So when I look at all of this, I look at the person that was interviewing him. I look at the things he's done in the past, trying to get CNN to give him money to donate to people. And then CNN saying, no, we're not going to do that. And then him immediately saying, well, okay, I'm going to go anyway. That was weird, and I don't know why he did it. I don't understand why he did it. $5 million is a lot of money. A lot of money. Maybe not to him, though he has stated that $1 million is nothing, or at least a small loan. But that, in other instances, he said, hundreds of thousands of dollars is a lot. And I don't understand how that works, but I guess it depends on where you're putting it. I guess $100,000 in pens is a lot of money, though $1 million in relief for so and so is not. So there is argument there, but it's really hard to figure out what he's saying. And that's one of the problems I have with trying to assess the situations without being biased, because you have to fill in a lot of the stuff, and I don't want to. I don't think that's a good idea. It's not a good practice to get into, because once you start filling in your own ideas, your bias starts to fall through. And that's not good. So my assessment of fairness and understanding of a situation is, if somebody says something you disagree with, you have to stop, you have to assess it harder than you normally would. And that's difficult because you already don't want to do it in the first place. Now you have to do more. Because if you don't, you're going to be unfair about it. And the media doesn't care. Like I know journalistic integrity is a thing. I know that some people are very, very adamant about having it, but they're not going to be the ones that get the scoop. They're not going to be the ones that get the scandal, or they're not going to get the story, because they're not going to be willing to post about it. So you have the ones that do want to have the scoop saying everything. So they're the ones that are the most heard, the most clicked on, the most willing to get everything they want without being fair about it. And that's one of the issues, is the people that are the most fair are the least likely to succeed, at least in this venture. I mean, doctors are probably going to handle this much better in their field, because being fair and honest about things is the way you don't get sued. So looking at this, you can't associate Alex Jones and Trump just because he was on his show at roughly the same time as the shooting. You can't do that. Him giving his vote of confidence of your reputation is amazing does give you merit for assuming that he understands who this person is and their history is spotty, so you can associate those two things. That's fair as far as that goes. Then you can say the CNN money asking thing was weird and I don't understand it, and I've never seen an explanation for it. Besides, he wanted the money because he got them money, and then he wanted to give the money away to people he thought deserved it. But in the end, that doesn't really equate to... I don't understand what that really means. Like, why was he doing all of that to begin with? The shooting in San Bernardino, nobody really knows why it happened. People are... And here's another thing that I really wanted to spot on that I completely forgot. The shooting immediately... Again, this is not the first time this has happened. Again, it was being called a radical Islamic whatever shooting, and then it was like, no, it wasn't. We don't know what was going on. It might have just been domestic. It might have been revenge. It might have been this. It might have been that. All speculation, but it was all being stated so quickly, and then jumping to the next thing and like, look, it's an ongoing investigation, and. That's what bothers me, is there were people claiming it was a terrorist attack, or that it wasn't a terrorist attack, because nobody was answering questions. And the reason they weren't answering questions was probably because it was an ongoing investigation and they're not legally allowed to answer most questions. So when I see people using an argument of they're not telling us, therefore they're hiding something, is not fair, because the way the system is run for the safety of, or at least the good practice of not being horrible people, is protecting the families of the victims. You don't start giving reporters information that the families don't know about yet. It's like the names of the victims or the names of the shooters. You don't want that publicly announced everywhere immediately until the facts come in and they figure out why everything happened. So when I see people using that as an excuse, and then the conspiracies come out, and that was actually the Alex Jones things. It's a pretty long article, and this article isn't his article. It's an article about his writing. It's just hold on, where is it? Here it is. Alex Jones' website, InfoWars, already has an article suggesting San Bernardino shooting was a false flag operation, and then it has a picture of his website. Is it from his Twitter? View image on Twitter. Okay, so it's an image from him on Twitter, from his website. The shooting at the Inland Regional Center in San Bernardino, California, does not fit the pattern of a typical mass shooting and appears to be geared to elicit widespread public outrage. And then it has bullet points. Reports indicate there were 3 shooters in tactical gear. The suspects escaped moments after the shooting in a black SUV. The shooting does not appear to the work be a disgruntled employee. I think that's a typo somewhere. So far, there is no motive and the shooting makes no sense. Several days before the shooting, there was an active shooter drill held in neighborhood. Police are releasing very little information about the shooting, victims, possible suspects, and other details because it was an ongoing investigation, though he doesn't say that. The shooting at a facility for people with developmental disability will undoubtedly result in widespread outrage, as did the alleged shooting at Sandy Hook Elementary School in December 2012. That's an association that I don't think is a very fair one, and I keep looking at my screen. I don't think it's saying it's an alleged shooting when it was a shooting. I don't know why he put that in. And he actually has other articles where he says it's a fake shooting as well. Like Sandy Hook, the shooting in California will feed into a demand for so-called gun control measures. So this is an anti-gun control thing at this point. He made it political, and that really bothers me. Because when you make something like a tragedy political for your own agenda, that makes you a horrible person. And the reason for that is because you're making it about you when it's not about you. So I know people really want to help. I know that that's a thing that people want. They say, you're in our prayers, or you're in our thoughts, or I'm going to donate a thing for you. Those are fine. But when you make a post or a comment, or you act in a certain way that tries to pull attention towards your thing, that's not fair. And you can say it's a tragedy and we need to prevent the future tragedy, so we should make an action. That can be good. Like, say there was a shooting and the shooter was somebody that was on a certain medication. And then another shooting happened and they were on the same medication. And then you realize the medication's dangerous. You can start a thing to say, hey, we need to deal with this. It's making people crazy. So you can start a petition, or you can start a thing where you get information out about this new thing, and you can say, this is something we have to deal with. It happened with the bath salts thing, where it kind of got out of hand, but because people were lying about it. But it's a thing that people need to address because it's bad. And okay, we can deal with that. This is kind of a response, a preemptive response against that. I mean, the shooting just happened. He posted this December 2nd, at 8 o'clock, and the first reports of the shooting I saw was... When did the shooting happen? I don't remember when the shooting happened, but it was pretty much the same day, or very, very soon afterwards. And when you preemptively do that, and you say, hey, it's not what you think. They're going to do this against us now. They're going to try to take away our guns because of this shooting. And, it might have been fabricated. It might have been politically done. And now they're going to take away our guns because of it. That's a conspiracy theory. You're building up an idea in people's minds, and then you're saying, now we have to act against that. It's not real. You're saying it's not real. It's fake. Fight it. And that's not the same thing necessarily as, we know the cause and therefore we're going to fight the cause. You're jumping ahead of that and trying to turn that around and say it's not real, it's not a problem, it's never a problem, they're trying to do this, they're the ones faking it all, don't trust the system kind of thing. And, well, I do understand that can happen, and people have always been distrusting of governments. Because governments are naturally, or at least in the modern age, many of them are corruptible. So when you have a system in place that is corruptible, you can say, well, they're just corrupt. That's why this is happening. But when you do that, and you do that about everything because it's what you want it to be, you want it to be a conspiracy. You want it to be that way so you can fight it. Because otherwise your narrative doesn't work. If it was an act of terrorism, or if it was domestic abuse, not domestic abuse, but I mean domestic terrorism, because people buying guns and then shooting up a school, or shooting up a hospital, or shooting up a news broadcast, or shooting up whatever, when you say it's not that, but it clearly is, your narrative falls apart, so you try to build up this thing around it, and then you just kind of stay in that world. And again, his reputation is they're out to get us. And that's not fair. It's not a reasonable kind of thing to just have. So, because it's not perpetuating, because the way it's been happening, and it's been on the news every single time it happens, is, oh, it happened again, therefore we have to do something about it, and then nothing happens about it. There's been a lot of mass shootings, a lot, over everywhere, and you don't hear about a lot of them because normally it's just gang violence, or it's just, it's a little kind of thing. I mean, a lot of people are dying. And it's not cool. I'm not trying to belittle that. But you don't hear about a lot of the mass shootings because it's very cut and dry on why it happened. This group of people did not like this group of people, so they shot them up. It's when you don't know the reasoning that it starts to get bigger, because people want to know. Was it terrorism? Was it some kind of, cult? Was it people that really hated the government? Or, why are these people shooting everybody? We want to know. And mystery is another thing that people really like. Answers to mysteries as well. So when you have a bullet point like that, says, like Sandy Hook, the shooting in California will feed into a demand for so-called gun control measures. That's not fair. And the next one, the last bullet point, the shooting occurred hours after House Republican blocked debate on a bill to prevent people on the government's no-fly list from exercising their Second Amendment rights. I don't know about that. I don't know anything about that, so I'm going to have to look into that. But I'm not talking about that bullet point. I just read them all to have them all there. Okay, and that's something else. So I was just reading that to make sure I wasn't missing out on something. This is related to something else. So I don't know why I'm pointing at things with my mouse. When you have an article or a response or even a thought on something, you can't have it be based off of your own world. You can have your own world that you live in. That's fine. Everyone has that. But when you interact with reality, if your reality in your mind doesn't match up, you can't force it to, because then you're damaging everything. Because your world and their world, or the real world, are all different. And if you have a really good grasp on reality and you understand how things work, that's perfect. It's a very smooth transition. You understand, you can interact properly. But if yours is so twisted that you cannot believe something is true, you cannot. This person is very clearly saying it must be this. And if it's not, because right now there's no evidence, none. I don't know anything about this besides what I've been told and read. And right now, it's too soon for anyone to actually know anything. So I'm not going to comment on that. But apparently the Sandy Hook shooting happened a long time ago. And it's just been commented it was a mass shooting. It was bad. A whole bunch of children died. A whole bunch of adults died. And there's been a lot of mass shootings since, and it's not getting better. And just you can look at the numbers and you can say, this or this, and you can build off of that. But when you say it wasn't, it can't be. None of these are real. They're all fabrications. They're all fake. And then it doesn't align with reality well. Then you start having conflicting things with interactions. And that's why being fair and understanding are necessary. Because maybe he does understand that the world isn't the way he's saying it, and he's just doing it for attention. Maybe. I don't know. That's a speculation. Could be a conspiracy. So you can say that as long as you understand and explain your reasoning behind it. I don't believe he is delusional. I don't believe he is so out of touch with reality that he believes this without a reason. So I need to understand his reason behind this. And I said that earlier in the same video. As long as he can explain it, as long as he can say this, and then that's why, and it's because of this, and maybe this person with this person at this place, as long as he can do that, I can understand it. And I might not agree with it, but at least I understand that he's not pulling it out of nothing. And that's really important. That's why I don't believe him. He doesn't explain his reasoning. It just must be this way. And again, that's the reason why I had the problem with Donald Trump saying his reputation was amazing, because his reputation is very spotty. And when he's talking about all of these things, he's not clear. He doesn't explain things. And I think a lot of the candidates have this problem. I'm not just saying Donald Trump. I'm bringing him up because he's the best example I could find, and he just keeps coming up. There's dozens and dozens of these examples, and I've tried really hard not to bring him up because I don't want to keep bringing him up because it's not adding to the conversation very much. It's really hard to add things when everyone's throwing in their own 2 cents. And once you name drop it, it's done. It's like calling somebody Hitler. The conversation is done at that point. And I'm not calling him Hitler. I'm just saying it's a similar. Once people have the same association, everyone's calling him Hitler or Gandhi. And so you polarize. As soon as you bring up his name, no matter what you say, people are just going to associate it, and there's nothing else you can add to it, which is why I don't want to talk about him. But I do want to be able to talk about the things that he says or the things that he does or the things that he associates with so that people can understand where this stuff is coming from. Because if you're not understanding where it's coming from, how are you supposed to understand what it is? And it's just really, really, really hard to articulate this properly without sounding like a conspiracy person myself or like somebody that doesn't know what they're talking about, because a lot of this stuff is really, really big, and I'm not really, really big. I'm very tiny. I'm just one person talking to my webcam and my little microphone, and I'm not important, and I'm not big. So what am I doing talking about all these things? And my brother commented on that as well, is what are you saying and why are you doing it? You're talking to yourself. And I didn't really have a response to that because I know I'm not big. I know I'm not somebody that's important. But I like to try, and I don't think it's a bad thing to try. And I know it wastes my time if I'm not going to ever succeed. But, what's the point in not trying as well? It's like, well, I'm just going to give up. What am I going to do now? Do something more practical. Okay, well, what? And there's no answer to that because it's my choice. And my choice is I want to do this. This is kind of what I want to do. And I want to get better at it, and I want to get a little bit bigger so that that my stuff it's not just me talking to nobody, but I need more people. I need a group of people to talk to and interact with before I can get that way. But right now this is practice, and this is me trying my best, and it's really hard sometimes. I'm still trying to keep that promise to my friend where I'm not going to give up. And I'm not going to get discouraged or let myself discourage myself. And it's really, really hard sometimes because I rewatch my videos, or I finish a video and I'm just like, I hated how that went, or I want to post it, and then 5 minutes later I really, really just think it's the worst thing ever. And I'm just trying. And I know that this video isn't the best. I know that it's not going to get me an award or get me noticed by a lot of people, but I'm still going to try. And I'm always going to try. At least I'm going to try. And I know some people it just comes naturally, and a lot of people just have a lot of energy and a lot of positivity. And I try to have that as well, but it doesn't come easily to me. I need to work towards it. And it's not something that I can keep up for a long time because I do eventually get burned out. So I'm trying to build that up as well. And I think my energy comes from interaction. I think that's one of the best things for me is once I have somebody to bounce ideas off of or to interact with, I can do it for much longer, and I can do it in a much more organic way. Excuse me. So I'm going to leave this video here. I'm going to post it immediately. And I really, really hope that this was informative, or that it explained things in a way that help you understand. I hope that the video and audio quality is good. Because I'm trying something new. I have the split screen, and I also have my webcam up here that I'm trying to look in as much as possible. But I tried taking pictures earlier. I was looking directly into it, and I took a picture, but it looked like my eyes were kind of floaty because I don't know exactly where to look inside of it because it's black in the center. So I don't know exactly if it's like pointed in a certain way because it looks like it's pointing to the right, but I can't tell inside. So every time I took a picture, my eyes looked weird, so I don't know if it's going to look right in the video. So I have a new setup, and I'm getting my new computer. I actually ordered it already, and it's going to be here in maybe 2-3 weeks, which I'm really happy about. I'm going to get a desk. I'm going to put the desk right there, and I'm going to move that over there, and hopefully, and then my videos are going to be from that wall pointing this way. So you're going to be able to see my setup over here in the background. And I think it'll look pretty good because I have a picture up there, and well, kind of a picture. It's a gift somebody gave to me, and I think the lighting will be a little bit better because that light will be above me instead of behind me. I think that'll be a little bit better because it's pointed up, so it'll reflect down a little bit better. Other than that, what else to add to the very end of this video? I'm still doing well, and I'm trying to get back in the swing of things. I am still kind of reeling from a lot of different just things happening all at once and me failing in a bunch of my videos in a row, but I'm doing good. At least I think so. And I'm happy about a lot of these videos that I actually get to post because I posted a few recently, and then I had the string of the bad ones, but the good ones were good, and I'm really happy about them. So other than that, I'm just hanging in there. So let me finish my intro. This is all in my outro. All of this was in the middle of my outro. I'm failing again, but I hope this was informative. I hope this was entertaining, and I hope to see you in my next video. And peace.